Well, isn't it strange for a story that's set so much further into the future not to have any computers? There's a reason for this anomaly that's been explained in the novel. So, although the story is set 20,000 years in the future, sometime around 10,000 years before that, there was a massive war called the Butlerian Jihad that was fought between humans and high-intelligent machines, also called thinking machines. To fill the void created by the destruction of the machines, humans from the Duneverse created an order of men called Mentats, who possessed fascinating abilities, making them valuable assets. You could think of them as maesters from Game of Thrones, but with much more intelligence and mental gymnastics abilities. In this video, we will unravel the mysteries behind the Mentats and explore everything from their creation and use to the twisted Mentats and why they were outlawed by Leto Atreides II. Who knows, by the end of this article, you might find yourself craving a bit of Sappho juice to enhance your cognitive abilities. Let's get this sandworm ride started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Prelude. Mentats replaced the computers and thinking machines, but what happened to them? Well, the first ever thinking machines appeared during the Old Empire around 2000 BG. Please note that even though it's called the Old Empire, it breathed its last around many thousand years from now. Now, BG and AG are the greatest turning points in the Duneverse, where BG means before guild and AG means after guild. If you're wondering what the guild is, I'll come to that in a bit. So, coming back to thinking machines. After mankind achieved greatness in science and the ability to travel faster than the speed of light, they started to explore the far reaches of the world, not very different from what happens in the alien universe. And the thinking machines helped mankind in everyday tasks, again, not very different from the synthetics from the Alien franchise. But when the humans from the Old Empire became extremely decadent, and the culture became stagnant, a group of people called the Titans rose against the Empire in the hopes of making it better. However, they ended up becoming overlords who divided the known planets among themselves and started their own kind of brutal rule. They lived a life of luxury and pleasure, and despite undergoing life extension treatments, old age was catching up to them, and this led to a more advanced breed of thinking machines. So the Titans decided to separate their brains from their bodies so that the brain could be preserved in electra fluid and stored in nearly impenetrable canisters. But since the Titans did not wish to be deprived of sensory pleasures, they connected these brain canisters with metallic bodies through thought roads that facilitated sensations. These cyborg titans were called Cymex. The first of them was Agamemnon, and the last was Xerxes. But the beginning of the end came when Xerxes relied too much on computer intelligence and left much of his governance to the same. This led to the inadvertent creation of an independent personality of computer intelligence, and this artificial intelligence called itself Omnius, a thinking machine in the truest sense. It does remind me a bit of Skynet from the Terminator movies. Omnius soon took control of the Titans and their empire, and even enslaved all the Cymex by bringing them into its personal neural network's fold, thus ensuring that the Titans never defied Omnius. The thinking machine started taking over worlds and seemed impossible until the League of Nobles, the last bastion of human civilization, launched a protracted and widespread guerrilla resistance. The last leg of this war, which annihilated all artificial intelligence, was led by Serena Butler and came to be known as the Butlerian Jihad. It ended with the total defeat of the thinking machines, but this was going to have dire consequences as it created a void. Consequences of Butlerian Jihad and the birth of new orders like Mentat, Bene Gesserit, and Spacing Guild. The time after the Butlerian Jihad was significantly tumultuous, from the rise of new empires to the dramatic commandment against creating machines that mimic the human mind. We've seen it all. Yes, the Orange Christian Bible of the time stated, and I quote, "Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind." This led to a noticeable gap in humanity's quality of life, particularly in the realm of logical calculations and problem solving. But it wasn't problem solving and calculations. When the thinking machines were destroyed, it wasn't just a minor inconvenience. We're talking about billions of deaths deaths due to starvation, diseases, and other causes. And let's not forget about the impact of governments, medicine, business, and trade. They were all left floundering without the technological backbone they'd come to rely on. The cohesion and organization of society took a serious hit, except for a few anarchical planet states, which were apparently doing just fine without any sort of government structure. Talk about being ahead of the curve! In response to these dire situations, various orders like the Mentat, Bene Gesserit, and Spacing Guild were created to fill the void left by the absence of thinking machines. The inspiration behind Mentat Order and the creation of the first batch of Mentats. This is where we get to meet the illustrious Gilbertus Albans. He was a philosopher and logician of interstellar renown, whose visionary program for human computers, the Mentats, forever changed the technological landscape. In the spring of 1231 AG, whilst engrossed in a scholarly tome detailing the legendary Butlerian Jihad, Albans was struck by a revelation. The seemingly omnipotent computers of yore were fashioned and created by human hands and intellects. So he theorized that it was impossible that the thinking machines could ever possess capacities and capabilities that were beyond the limits of a well-trained human mind. With characteristic ambition, Albans set to work devising a curriculum for the training of Mentats, selecting only the most promising minds for his program. Conscious of the limitations of traditional hierarchies, Albans eschewed titles like president, director, and manager because these emphasized power or action in favor of those who underscored the processes and relationships integral to the Mentat program. The three initial ranks of adepts, memorizers, processors, and hypothesists, were the fruit of the Albans' contemplation, with each tier imparting ever greater capacity and fluency in the art of mentatry. Though beset by financial troubles, Albans insisted on a rigorous standard for his Mentats, with none permitted to serve until they had achieved mastery in all three ranks. Yet Albans, ever the savvy strategist, permitted his trainees to showcase their nascent Mentat abilities, a move that ultimately proved instrumental in the Order House's relocation to new environs. The Mentats of Albans' creation were no mere novelty, but a formidable force that redefined the limits of human cognition. The Mentat Order almost died in infancy. Once on a jaunt to showcase the talents of his Mentat trainees, Gilbertus Albans found himself in a spot of bother when a group of processors became separated from the main party. Seeking directions to the stadium, they were unwittingly pointed in the direction of a band of gladiators by a hapless passerby. Unbeknownst to the processors, their newfound guides were ill-suited to the task at hand and led the group straight into the arena, with fatal consequences. Thus began a string of similarly unfortunate incidents that would eventually lead Albans to seek the protection of the Tleilaxu. With the promise of military defense from the Tleilaxu in exchange for a cut of the profits, Albans relocated his order to Tleilax and continued his crusade to convince Chom of the value of Mentats. The program was a roaring success, shrouded in secrecy, and brought wealth and prosperity to both the Order and their Tleilaxu benefactors. Having said that, as with all great successes, there were darker consequences lurking beneath the surface. Some suggest that the Tleilaxu's investment in the Mentat program gave them the capital they needed to pursue their biogenetic engineering endeavors. Others speculate that the Tleilaxu's insatiable greed led them to attempt to replicate the Mentat program through less savory means. How exactly are the Mentat trained? The role of the Mentat was not for the faint of heart. It required both exceptional mental ability and strict mental conditioning. But for those who possessed the inner disposition necessary for the program's effectiveness and a call to reason to endure the discipline, the rewards were great. These exceptional individuals had the privilege of employment with the most powerful houses in the known universe. The Mentat training began as early as possible, even in infancy if the potential was strong enough, which meant that the trainee did not even know that they were being trained. This meant that the Mentats in training were exposed to a range of sensory experiments from sound and color to texture and taste. They were even subjected to emotional stimuli like fear, joy, anger, love, hate, and security. Because let's face it, being a Mentat requires nerves of steel. Throughout their childhood, the Mentat-to-be went through a rigorous year-round program designed to broaden their cognition and resist specialization. The Mentat training school motto was, "Everything is important, and nothing is more important than everything." And they meant it. Neglecting one study in favor of another was not an option, and severe punishment was the consequence for such deviation. Albans had some serious expectations for his students, and not just in terms of mental capacity. He wanted them to be self-directed and independent by the time they hit 15 years of age, and he wasn't afraid to use a little tough love to get them there. The students were put through a rigorous program that involved everything from campus construction and maintenance to weekly fasting and long-distance running. And let's not forget the ever-important sports that developed strategy as well as physical skill. But it wasn't all punishment and sweat. In the final year of preparation, the students were given a crash course in all things logic, inference, and geometry. These studies laid the foundation for the Mentat training to come. Of course, success wasn't guaranteed, and those who couldn't keep up were unceremoniously washed out of the program. But for those who made the cut, the rewards were great, guaranteed employment with the power players of the known universe. Such a feat would be celebrated by all the fellow students, and they would help the selected Mentat with everything that would ease his journey from being a student to living the respectable but dangerous life of a Mentat. And even if a Mentat did not get hired, they could begin to serve in the Mentat school in administrative and teaching capacities, which was not at all considered shameful. Not too shabby for a bunch of brainiacs. How were they used by the great houses? Unlike a boring old computer, a Mentat was much more than just a fancy calculator. These bad boys were equipped with exceptional cognitive abilities that allowed them to do some serious mental heavy lifting. With razor-sharp memory and keen perception, Mentats could gather huge amounts of data and whip up concise analysis in no time flat. And we're not just talking about run-of-the-mill logical deduction here. No, Mentats had the ability to cultivate what's known as the naive mind, a mind free of preconceptions and biases that can extract essential patterns and logic from data to deliver, with varying degrees of certainty, some damn useful conclusions. With skills like that, it's no wonder that many military commanders and political leaders sought out Mentat training. And it wasn't just limited to the bigwigs either. Even a few lucky individuals, like Thufir Hawat, were blessed with enough innate Mentat abilities to become exclusive advisors to major houses. Clearly, becoming a Mentat wasn't a walk in the park, as it took serious talent and discipline. And even then, there were varying degrees of ability. Some Mentats could greatly increase their processing power by using sappho juice, which was extracted from the Ikaz tree root, but repeated use led to addiction and some seriously red lips. A Mentat servant could be aptly described as a connoisseur of reason and logic, much to the chagrin of the Bene Gesserit, who would surely reject such a title. These intellectual virtuosos were experiments in all facets of logic and inference, possessing a paranormic understanding of concepts rather than a narrow expertise in one area. Their quasi-truth sense, based on inference rather than prescience, made them a formidable asset to the great houses as political advisors. With their eidetic memories and unparalleled ability to process immense amounts of data, Mentats provided invaluable insights that could otherwise be missed. Even those who were not fully trained as Mentats could benefit from limited instruction, which is why several political and military leaders wanted to get trained in the Mentat ways. In fact, Paul Atreides was also trained in the Mentat ways. Why can't Mentats become rulers and leaders? The Mentat adept possessed a remarkable ability to make seemingly impossible connections and insights, but this often required them to enter a deep mental state that some skeptics claim was just a fancy show. However, countless Mentats have reported experiencing this trance, and the evidence strongly supports its authenticity. During the trance, their eyes would glaze over, their voice would become monotone, and their focus would be turned inward. Despite their incredible mental abilities, Mentats historically struggled in leadership positions, as they tended to rely too heavily on the isolating trance for accuracy. Successful leadership requires a certain temperament, and intuition often trumps pure reasoning when dealing with complex social and political problems. Mentats, being trained as human computers, tended to avoid intuitive judgments whenever possible, leading to delays in decision-making. That being said, Mentats were held to a strict ethical code, which some groups found to be a hindrance. The Bene Talailax, for example, were known to twist some Mentats, like the infamous Piter de Vries, who were able to make calculations free from any ethical considerations or limitations. It just goes to show that with great power comes great responsibility, and sometimes a little ethical ambiguity can be alluring to those with less scruples. The Killer Mentat Program. The Talailaxu Society, renowned for their experimental forays in controlled mutation, was particularly intrigued by the possibilities of combining Mentat training with their own perverse creations. Enter the KMP, or the Killer Mentat Program, a notorious collaboration that resulted in the downfall of the Mentat Order. Albans, the wise man and founder of the Mentat Order, who cautioned against blending Mentat expertise with specialization, had been proven right time and again. However, as the centuries passed, his advice was disregarded, culminating in a disastrous agreement between Proctor Highbines 6 and the Tleilaxu in 154 AG. Highbines believed that providing third and fourth tier mentats for genetic experimentation would be a low-risk strategy for increasing the Order's numbers. Alas, it was not to be. The Tleilaxu gained access to the secret mentat training programs, but their resulting products were anything but a success. The ill-fated experiments produced rebellious, disloyal mentats who committed egregious errors of judgment. This catastrophe resulted in the dreaded fear of twisted mentats, like the one who served Vladimir Harkonnen, to be played by Mr. Skarsgård in Villeneuve's movie, and even trustworthy mentats were viewed with suspicion. While the exact nature of their twisted state remains a mystery, it is known that these mentats are not selected through the same rigorous process as those trained in the official academies. Academy-trained mentats are chosen for their natural talent and character, and are only trained in areas where they excel. In contrast, Tleilaxu twisted mentats are selected based solely on their natural aptitude, and are trained beyond their limits using potentially artificial or genetically modified means. The Tleilaxu pride themselves on customizing not just the mentats' computational abilities, but also their physical attributes, personality, and psychological condition to suit the desires of their clients. However, the price of this level of customization appears to be a high one. The so-called twisting process may result in psychological and personality disorders. It is possible that their natural flaws and character defects, which would have disqualified them from academy training, play a role in their aberrant behavior. For example, the infamous Piter de Vries may have been customized to be a psychopath at the request of his employer, the Baron Harkonnen. Intriguingly, the Gola Duncan Idaho, himself a product of the Tleilaxu, claims that the twisting process is nothing more than a hoax perpetuated by the Tleilaxu to maintain interest in their forbidden, yet highly coveted mentats. He suggests that these twisted mentats are simply academia-trained individuals who were expelled or failed, and were subsequently given complete mentat training by the Tleilaxu without any genetic engineering or alterations. While this may be true, the fact remains that Tleilaxu mentats like Piter de Vries are undeniably strange and unsettling. Perhaps the Tleilaxu simply excel at salesmanship and understand the allure of the forbidden. Or perhaps, as some suspect, they truly possess the ability to create mentats that are beyond the scope of traditional academy training. In short, the Tleilaxu's disastrous collaboration with the Mentat Order shattered its reputation. What happened when mentats were outlawed by God Emperor? The fall of the Order of Mentats. The fall of the Order of Mentats was not a matter of happenstance, but rather a carefully orchestrated demise. The ascension of Leto II Atreides to the title of God Emperor spelled trouble for the entire Mentat Order. Leto's unwavering goal to ensure humanity's survival through the realization of the Golden Path saw him hoarding the spice melange with little regard for short-term problems, much to the chagrin of the Guild and the BG. The God Emperor's plan appeared to be the gradual destruction of the Order, beginning with its progressive weakening. His many Duncan Idahos were charged with surveilling all known Mentat advisors, while lower-ranking Mentats were required to register with planetary governors and secure special permission to travel between planets. Unfortunately, the Guild, fearing its loss of its spice allowance, often refused even reasonable Mentat requests. In a carefully orchestrated horror show, Leto outlawed Mentat training in 11745 AG. Within 90 years, all known Mentats, including those in probationary training, had died, and the fish speakers sealed the vacant Order House of Tleilax for 200 years. Although the house was later reopened as a museum, Leto did not extend his toleration of museum Fremen to allow for the establishment of museum mentats. Curiously, when the public was permitted access to the house, no papers, manuals, or instructional guides were found among the records. Ironically, Leto II, who had once outlawed the Mentat Order, was forced to rely on Reverend Mother Antiac, who was allegedly a fully trained mental advisor, contrary to his order. In the last year of his life, Leto asked Antiac to undertake a journey to Ix, where she died without reporting to her mother house either the nature or the result of that mission. In the end, Antiac, a woman, served as the last ever Mentat. Appearance of the Mentats in live-action adaptations of Dune. Thufir Hawat. In the 1984 cinematic rendition of Frank Herbert's magnum opus, Dune, Thufir Hawat, the Mentat to House Atreides, meets a fate that was left unseen by the public. Actor Freddie Jones portrayed Hawat in the film, and although his death scene was shot, it ended up on the cutting room floor. However, in a deleted sequence, Fade Rotha offers Thufir a weapon and a tempting proposition: eliminate Paul Atreides and receive an antidote in return. With this precognitive ability, series, Paul sees through it and offers to sacrifice himself in exchange for Thufir's years of loyal service to the house. Instead of stabbing his young liege, Thufir does something even more dramatic. He removes his own heart plug, leaving behind a poignant final utterance to Paul. Jan Vlasak, who portrayed Thufir in the 2000 miniseries, departs from this interpretation by leaving Thufir's fate unknown after his last appearance in Arrakeen, where he swears his allegiance to House Atreides. It is reasonable to assume that Thufir perished in the ensuing battle. In the 2021 Dune film, Stephen McKinley Henderson takes on the role of Thufir Hawat, bringing a new dimension to the character's intriguing arc. Piter de Vries. In the various adaptations of Dune, the role of Piter de Vries, the twisted mentat loyal to House Harkonnen, has been portrayed by a series of talented actors. In the 1984 film, Brad Dourif, known for his Academy Award-nominated work, brought a sinister intensity to the character, delivering the iconic mentat mantra with chilling conviction. In the Frank Herbert's Dune miniseries, Piter was portrayed by Jan Unger, who captured the character's twisted loyalty and maniacal tendencies with aplomb. And in the 2021 Dune film, David Desmalchin brings his own unique energy to the role, embodying Piter's unsettling intelligence and devotion to the Harkonnens. No matter the adaptation, Piter remains one of Dune's most memorable and disturbing characters, brought to life by a talented roster of actors. Is Paul Atreides still a mentat? The question of whether Paul Atreides is a mentat in the 2021 Dune adaptation is a fascinating and complex one. While the film does not overtly depict his mentat training, it's possible that director Denis Villeneuve intended for his audience to read between the lines. After all, given the vast source material to condense, Villeneuve may have wisely chosen to focus on Paul's Bene Gesserit connections and training, which are crucial to his Kwisatz Haderach destiny. Nevertheless, mentat fans need not despair, as there are ample clues suggesting that Paul's logic training might be explored in future films. In the meantime, it's worth noting that Paul's mentat potential and training are integral to his survival and strategizing within the treacherous political landscape of Arrakis. While the film emphasizes Paul's education under his mother, Lady Jessica, fans are privy to hints of his mentat training through his interactions with Thufir Hawat. Moreover, Paul's superior cognitive abilities, such as his rapid cognition and ability to read body language, points to his mentat potential. It's also worth considering that Paul's mentat training might have been kept a secret from him by Thufir, in keeping with mentat tradition. Such a revelation could be revealed in flashbacks, similar to those that conveyed his Bene Gesserit-induced visions. Regardless of how the story unfolds, one thing is clear: the combination of Paul's Bene Gesserit and mentat training makes him a formidable force to be reckoned with on both the battlefield and in the war room. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone!